all of a sudden I just found like this new world. I feel like extremely interesting and powerful. It enables people to build interesting things, and overall it's just super fascinating to me.
That is Tony Jiang, an associate product manager here at Salesforce. I'm Josh Burke, your host for the Salesforce Developer Podcast, and here on the podcast you'll hear stories and insights from developers for developers. Today we sit down and talk with Tony about the OpenAPI implementation that is ongoing here at Salesforce and some of the great advantages with it. And we start with how Tony got into Salesforce.
So definitely tech, software engineer was something that I was interested in. And to be frank, when I first applied for jobs, I first originally applied as software engineers to many companies, and it's only through a lot of small fate or interesting events that I got into product management. But yeah, definitely in tech and software engineering.
Got it. Okay, well, first let's go even before that. Like, what was like your earliest experience with computers?
Earliest experience, I think probably in elementary school, if not earlier, but I definitely know in elementary school, there's a course that teaches you about computers and some softwares, words or things like that, PowerPoints. And there's even courses that teach you about typing. So probably my first experience. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so then let's go back to that other point. This is your first full-time job out of college, right?
Yes.
And how did you get involved in the associate the associate program? Is it program manager or product manager?
Product.
Product manager. Tell me a little bit about that program and how you got involved in it.
So yeah, the program is started originally by RCO Brad when he was still the chief product manager, and he was originally one of the earliest associate product managers at Google when he started his career. And when he joined Salesforce and he was leading the product organization, he really wanted to have more younger product managers be a part of Salesforce and grow with the company because he had such a great experience at Google. So he started this program. So the program is targeted for young, just new grad students, just finished college, who has a background in engineering or technology. They are interested in product management, and it's a very tiny program. Each year they take about 12 new students from college, and just a super fascinating experience. You get so this is a rotational program, so 2 years, and you rotate on a different team every 8 months. So this is my first rotation here at Salesforce, working on platform.
Got it. Okay, so 2 follow-ups on that, and then you actually just segued to my next question, because I was looking at your resume. And it's like you were moving from, I think, where did you move from to when you went to the API team? Where did you start?
So I was a associate product manager intern last summer at Salesforce too, and I was on Marketing Cloud, working with the Interaction Studio team. So over there, the project I worked on is actually building integrations with Salesforce, because Marketing Cloud and specifically Interaction Studio is actually an entirely separate technology stack and has its own softwares. And we are trying to build integrations with Salesforce using the Salesforce platform technology. Got it. So it's very interesting.
Got it. So that's the whole thing kind of fascinates me, because as somebody who got into software engineering kind of almost accidentally, I was like a child of the internet. Like, I needed to go find a job. So I started like freelance, like creating websites and stuff like that. But the concept of being a product manager had never really occurred to me until I started like working at a bigger corporation, basically. So what attracted you from engineering to product managership? Yeah.
So my first product manager internship was definitely accidental, but through that experience, I enjoyed many aspects of product development. So not just about building stuff, but also coming up with ideas, talking to customers, especially in the beginnings, and learning their pain points, their needs, their jobs to be done. And then coming up with ideas, solving them, and then putting pieces together, building out a roadmap for it, and working with cross-functional teams to make that happen. And eventually seeing that pay off through the smiles of our customers. So, which is tremendously rewarding. So I think the whole cycle of product development and the many aspects of things, not just building, really attracted me to product management.
Nice. Through the smiles of our customers. I love that. That is awesome. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about your current work. You're currently on the API team and you're focusing on OpenAPI, right?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about OpenAPI, like what is it and where did it originate from?
Yeah, so OpenAPI it's the industry standard format for describing and documenting RESTful APIs. It's in JSON or YAML format, so it's machine readable. And if I can show something, it will be more clear. But essentially, it documents everything about the API, the single source of truth
Okay.
for the API. Things like what are the endpoints or UIs you can call for the
Mm-hmm.
API? What are the authorization methods that you can have for each endpoint? The expected outcomes for a given API, and also what are the parameters you need to provide. So
Got it.
it provides kind of a way for developers to document their APIs in a very
Got
systematic way.
Got it. Got it. So does that mean, so does it change or influence the shape of the API at all, or does it just sort of sit adjacent to it?
It's JSON. So as long as you
Okay.
have a RESTful API, it can
Mm-hmm.
be described or represented in OpenAPI specification.
Got it. Got it. So I think I think a little bit of that to a developer probably is kind of obvious, but what's the big advantage of implementing something like this?
So one of the biggest advantage I think is it is industry standard way of describing it. So a lot of for developers who have already learned OpenAPI for the first time or have used it before, once they
Mm-hmm.
have known the schema construct or how it works, they will have a much easier time when they see an OpenAPI for some other APIs again in their career. So if they have seen OpenAPI for Zoom's API, and when they see one for Salesforce, they'll be able to really understand how things work. So it makes it easier for them to understand, comprehend APIs in that
Okay.
standpoint. And on top of it, there's a whole suite of open source tools, often under the name of Swagger, that
Mm-hmm.
consumes OpenAPI specifications, and it allows many things to happen from that. So you can have interactive documentations be generated after consuming the spec, so that
Mm.
developers who are new to learning about the API can just visually understand through some type of UI how API works. There's a tool called Swagger CodeGen that once you feed a OpenAPI specification to it, it can automatically generate SDKs or
Mm.
packages in whatever language chosen by the developers that they can embed into their kind of their own systems and call those APIs really easily without writing any custom code. So there's a lot of kind of really nice use cases and industry standard tools that
Mm-hmm.
makes leveraging OpenAPI specification extremely important.
Nice. I gotta say, hearing all of this and especially that, this sounds like a super modern version of a WSDL.
Yes, it is actually. So when I first got onboarded to the team and I was learning about everything, I was like, oh, there's already the WSDL file for the SOAP API, and
Mm-hmm.
my manager told me this is in a way similar to have a specification for the REST API, and we're calling it Open API.
Got it. Got it. And like, let's talk really specific because I know there's another project some of my colleagues have worked on with it where they're trying to get like collections up and running on Postman so that Postman can be an easy, mock
Mhm.
slash wrapper for our APIs. What kind of influence will this have on that kind of project?
So yeah, so we already have a Postman collections for Salesforce's API that
Mm-hmm.
were put together by our Salesforce developers, Salesforce communities. It's all great, but often they might be missing APIs that we have recently launched, or it might not be constantly be updated. It takes effort, I would say. But if
Mm-hmm.
we have a open API specifications for the Salesforce API that are constantly being updated by us or is generated against the code, then someone can easily consume that open API specifications that we produce in a OAS supported client to like Postman to auto
Mm.
generate those collections automatically without having
Got
someone
it.
to craft it himself. So it makes it a little bit easier to manage such a package. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So instead of having to A, know that the API has been updated, B, remember you have to go change your collection spec, C, update all of that JSON and everything else that Postman's doing, and then push it out to GitHub. It almost sounds like you could put that into a build deploy at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also Postman is one kind of use case of OAS, Open API
Mm-hmm.
specifications. There's a whole bunch of other use cases. I do find the collection that has already been created by our developer communities on Postman, it's already really useful. In that case,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the Open API use case for Postman is not as uh, useful. The marginal benefits a little less.
Got
But
it.
for some other use cases, it's definitely something they don't have access to before.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so tell me about the current state of the Open API project, like, and then we can talk roadmap in a little bit. But what kind of pilot is it in right now?
Yeah, so we started our journey with OpenAPI a couple releases ago, and
Mm-hmm.
we focused on initially with the sObjects API for our REST API.
Okay.
And we are simply right now for our pilot phase just trying to represent four sObject API resources in OpenAPI specifications as pilot, and then showing that pilot OpenAPI specifications to a select group of pilot participants. So that's
Got it.
kind of our current state. And in spring 21, we are still focused on the same set of kind of pilot resources we're testing out, but we
Mm-hmm.
are moving towards this new kind of org specific specification. So previously, the previous
Mm.
pilot, we created a single kind of static spec that we are simply showing on GitHub. So we give access to all the pilot participants access to the GitHub repo so they can come and take a look at that spec. But now what they can do is they can call a OAS generation endpoint directly against their org so that whatever OpenAPI spec it generates contains org unique API endpoints and informations based on their org shape, based on their custom objects that they have created. So it's just because Salesforce is so unique in terms of its infrastructure and the multi-tenantness,
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense for that to happen. And especially
Right.
going forward, there's kind of org-specific API endpoints that our developers create, such as Apex REST. And for those, it definitely needs to be org-specific. The specifications they produce has to contain unique endpoints that only
Mm-hmm.
that org has versus the standard ones.
So current state, it's like you can kick the tires, but you're basically kind of just giving them a blueprint for them to just run, probably just sort of random testing and just kind of see what it's like. And future state is they could actually start sandboxing some implementations that actually respects like their data model and their current functionality.
Correct. So today is sort of like that's our initial pilot. It's sort of like a sample. So you can take a
Mm-hmm.
look at how it
Mm-hmm.
would look in the future. How
Mm-hmm.
would this look, when we have more resources represented? It's just kind of how we're going with this. And the next pilot, the next iteration, it's more similar to the whistle generations if you're familiar, which is you can
Right.
just click a button and then it'll create a whistle for that org. And then we're doing something similar for OpenAPI specification as well.
Got it. And going back to that Apex REST point, because I have to say Apex REST
Mm-hmm.
is like one of my favorite things on the platform, just like a super
Mm-hmm.
powerful way of creating custom REST endpoints. Any limitations there for the future roadmap when it comes to what I can do in Apex REST versus what OpenAPI can basically describe?
So we haven't got to kind of spiking on or trying to dig into the details of whether we can support OpenAPI specification for Apex REST, but
Okay.
we have learned from a lot of our partners, a lot of our customers that it is a highly important feature to have. So because they're creating their own APIs using Apex REST, they want those APIs to be documented to OpenAPI specification so they can hand it off to their stakeholders, especially
Right.
important for our partners so they can hand it out to their customers. So
Got it.
we have learned that it's extremely important for us to support OAS for Apex REST, and
Mm-hmm.
we will definitely look into that in future releases.
Okay, so hashtag safe harbor, a bright spot on the
Yes.
roadmap that you're looking forward to. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So I want to talk a little bit more about roadmap in a bit, but also curious about how this works like the other way around.
Mhm.
Does this have an impact on like external services or Flow's ability to consume REST APIs or anything like that?
So in its current state, we don't have any connection to external services aside from that. They also rely on OpenAPI specifications.
Got it.
But we do think that Salesforce really think that OpenAPI is it's a really powerful tool, right? It is this
Mm-hmm.
schema that outlines how you can call an API to integrate with systems, and we want to make integrations as easy as possible. And the narrative around this is that what I'm working on, which is the production side of the spec, is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the outbound version of integrations. How can
Mm-hmm.
other systems use our APIs easily? How can we enable developers to easily integrate, try out, mock against our APIs, make that as easy as possible? But on the other side, we want to make inbound integration as easy as well. And other companies, other great external web services are highly useful for our customers and partners as well. And they are also being described by OpenAPI specification as it is industry standard. So external services makes it extremely easy to connect Salesforce with those external web services by consuming a OpenAPI spec and turning them into invocable actions that that admin or developers can embed into or try out in Flow Builder as flows.
Got it. Nice. Nice. And so talking back again about that outbound, are there other, so you're talking about Apex REST, you're talking about the sObject API, are there other APIs that you're looking to expand out to?
Yeah, so the biggest vision is that we want to ensure that all Salesforce's API, basically the entire REST API, as well as other Salesforce kind of companies or services APIs, we want to make sure that all of them are going to be represented in OpenAPI specification. My project specifically focus on the core REST APIs, which is a
Mm-hmm.
big chunk of our platform API. So
Got it.
the bulk composite sObjects. Eventually, we want to represent them all in OAS, but it is going to be a journey for sure. And we want to focus on the ones that are the most important and learn from our customers and partners which ones are the most important for you to have OpenAPI spec for. And so
Okay.
we can focus on them first.
Got it. Got it. And are any of these changes going to have an impact on, creating legacy APIs or any current legacy APIs or anything like that?
No, we are currently just supporting the latest versions of the API. So when you generate
Got it.
OpenAPI specifications, you'll only be creating a spec for the latest versions of the Salesforce APIs.
Got it. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Anything else on the roadmap that you want to give a shout out to?
I think just look forward to having all the APIs being represented by OpenAPI specifications. Yeah, and we're really excited about Apex REST. We did really learn a lot from our customers, a lot of the pilot
Mm-hmm.
participants that we have worked with. That it is something that they need support with,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll definitely look into how to do that soon. And it would definitely move up in our kind of our priority list just because we have heard so much voice about it.
Got
But
it.
down the road, just expect all Salesforce APIs to be represented in OAS. And please let us know which ones are the most important for you so we can optimize and get to that goal in the shortest path.
Nice. So tell me a little bit more about some of the changes between like winter and what we're looking forward to in spring. Like, for instance, I think we're going from 2.0 to 3.0. Is that correct?
That's for external services. So for external
Gotcha.
services, yes, previous versions of external services only support OpenAPI 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
but we're currently in the pilot for supporting OpenAPI 3.0. So it's
Got it.
the newest version of OpenAPI. So
It's
yeah, for
got
external
it.
services,
For external
that's
services, but your project is hitting the ground running with 3.0.
yeah, we started off with 3.0, and we also do have two pilots, the Winter 21 and the Spring 21. The Winter 21 is the one I talked about, which is just a sample spec. We
Mm-hmm.
provide how it will look for the four sObject resources. in OAS and show it through a GitHub repo. For Spring is the org-specific OpenAPI specifications. How do you generate a spec that reflect your org unique shape and endpoints? That's
Got it.
kind of the focus of the Spring pilot.
And so looking forward to that spring pilot, how could people request access to that?
Yeah, so please reach out to your account teams
Okay.
and ask them to nominate you to be a part of the pilot. And then once they nominate you, we can get in touch and I'll walk you through the onboarding process.
Nice. And if people want to see some of this stuff in action, you had a demo back at DreamTX. Can you give me the 5-penny tour of that? Like what were you showing off in that demo?
Yeah, so we actually demoed two demos during DreamTX.
Mm-hmm.
One is the use case was Postman. So the focus there and the problem we're solving there is time to value for API Explorer and trying to understand the API. So a lot of developers who are new to Salesforce platform, who are new to the REST APIs, they need to read the documentations, and it takes them a lot of times to really get onboarded. But a lot of times they don't have the luxury to have time to really get to speed.
Yeah.
But if they have already experience with OpenAPI and they already know the various tools such as Postman that allows for auto creating collections for APIs, they can just generate a OpenAPI spec for the APIs they're interested in. Currently, we only support sObjects, but in the future, the APIs they're interested in, and then create documentations or auto-generate collections in Postmans so that they can start learning about how the API works, mocking against it, testing against it, or in minutes without just simply looking at the documentation developer guide and have to write custom codes to try it out. So it's really a experience to help them get on and ramp up with the API as quickly as possible.
Nice. I love that in part because I remember the interview I had with Nita Rosen, and she was like, the first thing to start a project is just to start hitting the REST APIs and just see what they actually do and like throw data at it, get the data back. And one thing was like, don't necessarily trust documentation because it's like, the REST API is the actual, like the thing that you're actually going to be talking to. And everything that you just said there solves so much of that because it's faster to learn and you're auto-generating the docs based on the actual API. So that's also going to be more stable. Very cool.
Just to add a little bit color here. So if you just read the documentation, it's great. It's comprehensive. We provide examples, but we can't cover everything. So one example of something that shows up in OpenAPI specification because it's generated a code that's not on the developer guide is if you're calling the sObject API to create an account. On the developer guide, you're only going to see kind of a templatized URI that says you can tell us what the object name you want to create a record for, and then you can just do that. But because there's so many objects, they can't tell you what is specifically the parameters or the inputs required for whatever object you want to create. But in OpenAPI specifications, because we are generated against the code and generated against the objects that are available in your org, you'll be able to find specifically the UI for that record you're interested in. Let's say you want to create an account. When you go to that section of the OpenAPI specifications, it lists out the parameters and the fields it requires for creating a record of the account objects listed out. So the different fields it needs, the name, I don't know exactly the other fields, but we'll tell you what are the fields required. And it shows that in the collection that's auto-generated in Postman. So that when you are trying to create a record of the record in Postman, you can just kind of read it and then just replace it with the mock data you have to quickly try out.
Okay, so that was one demo. There were two demos for DreamTX. What was the other demo that we showed?
Yeah, so the other demo focused on a slightly different developer persona. So the first one was about the API Explorer persona, someone who's new and doesn't know much about the REST API. But this one is focused on a Salesforce developer already in the weeds of trying to create integration. So Aditya, the host of the episode, showed an example of how a developer can fast track the application development lifecycle by consuming a OpenAPI Spec in Swagger CodeGen, the tool I talked about earlier that allows developers to auto-generate an SDK or package of the APIs in whatever language they select. In the case of the demo there, I think Aditya was creating a Node.js backend, and they want to be able to call the sObjects APIs in Salesforce. So what he did is he took the pilot spec that we are demoing, and he just generated a SDK, then installed it into the Node.js app that he had, and then really simply be able to call that and then make calls against the Salesforce APIs without writing actual code to make the calls himself.
Nice.
So extremely powerful, and took him like 5 minutes to make the app happen.
That's awesome. So I actually do have a follow-up question, because it just occurred to me how much this work sounds like it overlaps like some of the work we've done internally when it comes to creating like a mobile SDK. Is there going to be an impact on some of the other SDKs because they'll be able to take a leverage on this or take advantage of this?
I think the mobile SDK, I'm not super familiar, but it definitely has a kind of focus on mobile and unique features for that. But for this, it's focused on the API. So you can use this SDKs in whatever applications you have. You don't even have to use it in an application. I heard from a customer, their use case is to auto-generate those kind of SDKs for integration testings. So before, they have those integrations that rely on Salesforce API, and they have to manually write all these integration tests themselves. But if with the SDK, auto-generate all those kind of methods for them, so they can easily test it without writing much code.
And that's our show. Now, before we go, and even before we talk about Tony's favorite non-technical hobby, I just want to give a quick shout out to the weekly charity Fortnite match that I have started playing. We've actually been doing it for a while, to be honest, with some of your favorites like Reed Carlberg, Heather Storm, and James Lowry. If you want to catch that, it's twitch.tv/Josh Burke, and we try to do it every Thursday, 5 o'clock Central Time. Now, I did ask after Tony's favorite non-technical hobby, and it turns out it's basketball, and like so many people, it's been impacted by the pandemic. Nice. Nice.
Yeah. Now it's a hard time to play because everything's locked down and the courts are kind of shut down. But before I like to kind of just play around, shoot around with some friends, or just play with myself, and just kind of a way for me to meditate on my own. Yeah.
I want to thank Tony for the great conversation and information. If you check out the show notes for this episode, you can get more information about the OpenAPI program, and including a couple of tips on how you could get into the pilot. Now, if you want to learn more about this podcast in general, head on over to developer.salesforce.com/podcast, where you can hear old episodes, see show notes, and have links to your favorite podcast service. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week.